सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
This has been a particularly unusual year in the sense that we haven't spoken about sport in a full episode of Cut the Clutter any time during the year. Now that is saying a lot. Nearly 300 episodes of Cut the Clutter, and we don't talk about sport when you know us to be so sport crazed, right? Now that also tells you it wasn't a great year for Indian sport, because when great stuff happens, you also feel inspired, you talk about this. Particularly, it wasn't a good year for Indian cricket. Now, if I talk to two of my young colleagues, just to do a little bit of a fact check, because I can come at things as a fan sometimes and get things wrong, Raghav Bikhchandani and Anurag Chaube, they affirm this belief that 2022 was probably, or most likely, frankly, I would say certainly, the worst year for Indian cricket since 2012. Why was 2012 bad? I will tell you in a couple of minutes. What are the awful things that happened in 2022? Let me tell you, first of all, the most awful things are those that did not happen in 2022. So, for example, we did not win a single ICC trophy. Now, that has been a problem for some time, and that problem now continues. 2022, our cricket team did nothing to fill that gap, and that continues, and so the quest and the wait continues. Even worse, this was a year in which India did not make the final of an ICC tournament. Not just ICC tournament, India did not even make the final, can you believe it, of Asia Cup. And India lost to Sri Lanka there. So this has been a particularly bad year for white ball cricket. Having said that, for test cricket, India played all of 7 test matches this year. Now that tells you also something about the scheduling of Indian cricket right now. So it's only 7 test matches. Of those 7 test matches, India won 4. So you can be happy, but that is if you count dumb numbers. Those 4 victories came against Bangladesh in Bangladesh. That has just ended. Although we nearly messed it up in the second test, we were 74 for 7, chasing just 145. And I was thinking of some chases that we messed up in the past, but fortunately it did not go that way. We were saved the blushes by Shreyas Iyer and Ravichandran Ashwin. So we won. But our 4 victories out of 7 are against the weakest teams in test cricket in the world, and that too in the subcontinent. Besides these 4, the only 3 tests we played in SENA countries, as these are called, that is South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia, we lost all 3 of them. So after winning the first test in great style, the Boxing Day test match in South Africa at Centurion Park, last year we came back and promptly lost the following 2 test matches and lost a test series in South Africa. You know how bad South African cricket team right now is, particularly in red ball cricket. It took special talent and a special mindset for India to lose those 2 test matches in South Africa, when it looked like India were well set now to win their first ever cricket series in South Africa. In fact, that is the one voodoo India hasn't cracked, and it will now have to wait for the next occasion when India goes to South Africa. And we'd like to see if by that time, right now it looks like both Indian and South African team are on a down cycle, and let's see who comes up first. So that again is a hope that's been kicked down into the future. Besides that, we got a lot wrong. In the next 2 matches, for example, after the Boxing Day test match in South Africa at Centurion, not only did we lose, we failed to defend fairly decent targets. And each match we lost by 7 wickets. Now you might say Dean Elgar and his phenomenal luck. I suppose every human being comes with a quota of luck, and Dean Elgar used up all of that in those 2 test matches. So he stood in India's way, and in each test match, India lost by the identical margin of 7 wickets. So that was very bad. Then the rescheduled test match in Birmingham, that's a test match India, in my view, should have played in Manchester, but came back, one because they had an IPL coming up in UAE. So unfortunately, it looked like our players were more interested in that instead of playing the fifth test in Manchester and finishing the issue because India were on a high and England was on the defensive. So we gave England time. England recovered meanwhile, and when they came back to play us in Birmingham to complete that 5-test series, there India promptly went on to lose again, and yet again by 7 wickets. So Indian cricket acquired this new weakness. In fact, for the past many years, since the rise of India's pace and since the rise of India's pace bench strength also, we've been saying that India now has this unique ability to get the opposition out twice overseas. That is to get 20 wickets overseas. You cannot win a cricket test match without taking 20 wickets. But this year, it looks like Indian cricket lost that ability. So 3 losses by 7 wickets, and then we saw some other losses in ODIs, T20s also, where we failed to get wickets, and that became a big weakness. In fact, it was as if an old weakness had come back for India. Just how bad it was, that weakness, that inability to take wickets, we also saw in the T20 World Cup semi-final when we put up not a bad score, a half-decent score of 168, but England knocked off those runs without the loss of 1 wicket. That is Josh Butler and Alex Hales. So that is a big weakness that came up. Now to sum up, if I count the 6 lows of this year, that is series defeat in South Africa, crushing T20 semi-final defeat by England. Third, the firing of the entire selection committee. When did you see that happen last? Right? That means that even BCCI acknowledged that Indian cricket was in a deep mess. So the entire selection committee was fired, right? At this point, they are searching for a new selection committee. Number 4, you saw the end of Sourav Ganguly quite ignominiously, if I might say. There was this fancy idea that a cricketer should lead the board. Similarly, that sports people should lead all the sporting associations. So Sourav Ganguly was the first such example. He was the opening batter for this concept. And he retired hurt in no time without achieving anything, unless somebody thought that the dismantling of Virat Kohli was part of his KRAs. But you know what? Virat Kohli lost his captaincy, lost his form, had lost his form even earlier, but came back, is now scoring fair bit of runs, at least in white ball cricket. But Ganguly, on the other hand, went out of the board. He was given nothing, and it looks like the powers that be in the board have now fully dumped him. So that was the 4th big low. 5th big low, KL Rahul and India's opening troubles. Right? KL Rahul became India's captain. He captained India several times through this year, but his average has been really awful in all forms of the game, particularly in tests, where an opening batter counts most of all. In tests, his average this year has been how much? 17.12. Right? It's quite awful. Although in that Boxing Day test in South Africa, it scored 100. So his loss of form after that was also quite phenomenal, and that has not worked for India very well. And low point 6, of course, is our defeat in England. Our last test defeat in England. That should never have happened. Now, there were some good points also, some high points also, and I will come to those in a couple of minutes, in fact, towards the conclusion, because we are coming to an end of a year, and I can't leave you all with negative thoughts. So I will tell you the few good things that happened with the Indian cricket also this year. I told you 6 low points, 6 high points. They don't square off each other. The net result is still very negative for India. Nevertheless, we can end up the year with a smile and optimism. Now see how the woes of Indian cricket continued this year. We had the second ODI series loss to Bangladesh in Bangladesh, and that was when we almost had a full strength team this time. Didn't happen. Again, lack of not just consistency among our cricketers, but also consistency in terms of their availability to play cricket through a year, whether through fitness or form. And also our selectors were back to being what once Mahendra Amarnath had called them, a pack of jokers, right? Now you can't complain too much because the pack of jokers has been packed off, and we are carrying on merrily without a selection committee. And without a selection committee, when it's left to the tour management, you have this incredible situations like a man getting man of the match award in one match, Kuldeep Yadav in this case, and getting dropped in the next one. Nevertheless, look at the big picture. So of the 7 test matches that were played this year, only 7 in the entire calendar year. 12 महीने में 7 test match, 7. Only one Indian cricketer played all 7, and that is Pant. Pant played all 7. Next came Ashwin, who played 6. Pant did very well also. He scored 680 runs in these 7 test matches, average of 61.81 with 2 centuries. Again, see how many centuries India scored. 7 test matches, India scored 6 centuries. 2 for Jadeja, 2 for Pant. So both are not your frontline batters, right? So no number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scored centuries in this year. 2 for Jadeja, 2 for Pant, and then yes, Pujara got 1 in Bangladesh. I didn't count that earlier because I focus more on Sena countries. Pujara scored 1 now in Bangladesh and Gill scored 1 in Bangladesh. So 6 centuries in all, no centuries scored by India's top 4. In red ball cricket, test cricket, Rohit, Rahul, Kohli did not get 100 this year, and the 2 others who got their 100s towards the end of the year got in Bangladesh, that's Pujara and Gill. In fact, I will give you another piece of shocking statistics, shocking for us Indians, that if you look at India's 4 most famed, most experienced, most successful batters over the recent years, between them, all 4, that is Kohli, Rohit, Rahul and Shekhar Dhawan, in the past 3 calendar years, the 4 of them have had 12 centuries among them across formats. That is Test cricket, ODIs and T20s. Just for comparison and dil jalane ke liye, for a little bit of self-flagellation, just one man in the subcontinent, Babar Azam, has got more hundreds than that in these 3 years. He's got 13 hundreds. That's one more than the hundreds that these 4 famous Indians have put up together. So it tells you that Indian cricket has been in a crisis, and this year has been a very good exemplar of that. Even if you look at the 50s this year, then Pant has 4, he has 200s, 450s. He's been the best batter for India this year. Pujara has 3, Ashwin has 2, again somebody who comes towards the tail in the latter half of the batting lineup. Kohli, Bihari, Rahane, Rahul, 1 each. Terrible year for Indian batters. Again, no bowler played all 7 test matches as well. Ashwin played 6. Bumrah had the best record, 22 wickets from 10 innings, but he only played 10 innings, and after that, through the year, he's been missing in all formats of the game. Ashwin got 20 wickets in 12 innings, so he is the second best. Once again, to rub it in, look at the averages of our frontline batters this year. Pant, as we told you, 61.81, right at the top. Shreyas Iyer, 60.28, but that's happened at home or in the subcontinent, not really in the big league. To be counted, you have to score runs in Australia, South Africa, England, New Zealand. Of course, if you're a batter coming from those countries, you have to also score runs in India, because India has its own challenges, and India for a decade has had a very good attack. To score runs against India is a big deal. But for an Indian batter to get runs and to say, I got really great runs, I'm doing very well, you have to get runs in those countries. You can't blame Shreyas Iyer fully for it, because he wasn't even picked for those tours. But I was just putting his average of 60 in perspective, because this is either at home or closer home, as in Bangladesh. And then the only other frontline batter this year who's somewhere near his own career average, or maybe a little bit above that at this point, that is Pujara, who got 45.44, but he also got 100 towards the end of the year in Bangladesh. And then Rohit has 30, Kohli has 26.5, Rahul, we just told you, has 17.12, and Rohit, although he was made captain across all formats, but he's not been available that much this year. He was only available for 2 test matches out of 7, and even otherwise he's been in and out or taking time off. He'll be 36 next year, so somebody has to think about whether it's a good idea to have one man who's hitting 36 and who's been so unavailable, or who's been missing so many times and so often last year. Can you rely on him now to be your all-format captain? That is something that the new selection committee has to review. Some hard decisions have to be taken. Again, look at instability. If you've seen instability in the batting lineup, missing bowlers, Bumrah went missing very early on this year. Shami was in and out. But if you want to see instability, see the instability in captaincy. See how many captains has India had over this year. So we had Rahul in South Africa. We had Rohit at home against Sri Lanka. Bumrah for that one test match against England in Birmingham. Rahul again against Bangladesh. Then you carry on from there and see how many different ODI captains have we had. Rahul in South Africa, Rohit at home versus West Indies and away in England. And now in Bangladesh lately, Rohit, and then because Rohit got injured, then Rahul. So Shekhar Dhawan has been ODI captain this year in West Indies, in New Zealand, and at home versus South Africa. KL Rahul has also been India's captain in Zimbabwe. T20 this year had a packed T20 calendar, but India had only two captains. So India had Rohit when India played the full strength team, and Hardik Pandya when India played a kind of a second string team. But sometimes those second string teams look better than our full strength teams, if I may say so with great humility. Now, I told you earlier that this is probably the worst year since 2012. And you will ask me, why was 2012 so bad? So I'm not giving you full details, but just look at some highlights. We had a bad test match record that year and a bad white ball record that year, just like 2022. So in 2012, 9 test matches were played, of which we won 3. But remember, there is a qualifier. 2 of those were against New Zealand at home. 1 we won against England at home, but remember that was also an unusual year when we lost a series to England at home. So 2012 also was a really bad year. 3 of the 4 test matches we lost in Australia in a whitewash between 2011-12 were in 2012, right? So once again, a very bad year. T20 World Cup, we did not qualify for the top league. We were thrown out at the Super 8 stage. Remember that thrashing by Australia when Watson came and latched on to us, and that match was over in 15 overs. So if we look at the data tells us that this has indeed been Indian cricket's worst year since 2012. No doubt about that. Question is why and what can be done. Now that can be a large argument and opinion piece on which you may agree with me, you may not agree with me, but that's an entirely different piece. That's not cut the clutter. However, I will make one point on which I suspect and I hope and believe that you will agree with me, which is that over the past year, we have seen the Indian team lose its winning, aggressive elan, right? The fearless cricket that we saw growing in the Shastri Kohli era, that has now gone. And once again, you can see the fear of losing has come back in. India did so well, particularly overseas, because India had lost the fear of losing. Remember that test match in Gabba, which is among Indian cricket's biggest victories? If India had planned to draw that test match, India would have most certainly lost that test match. So that couldn't care less attitude now seems to have weakened, and players are worrying. What will happen if the team loses? Team might lose, right? And what will happen to me if I don't perform well? So the fear of the team losing, fear of defeat, and fear of being dropped is back. So we are hoping that Indian cricket team makes a turnaround, but for them to make a turnaround, they have to go back to the old Shastri Kohli era. Now I told you before I let you go that I'll give you something to smile, because a few good things have also happened this year. So let me count these. Number 1, Kohli is back at least in white ball cricket. So we can see he's got 200s now after a long time. He's batting better. You could see in Bangladesh that his weakness against spin continues. Hopefully somebody would advise him and make him play some domestic cricket. So he will fix his problems with spin. But the fact is that he's back mostly, which is the best news for India. That is something to smile about. Number 2, Hardik Pandya is emerging as a leader. He's not only emerging as a leader, but also a match winner. He's also bowling a bit, which means his fitness is coming back. Hopefully, let's hope this year he'll be fully fit. If he becomes a genuine all-rounder, that will fill a big gap in India. And in today's cricket, given how demanding the season is, nobody can play across all 3 formats, as Ben Stokes has also discovered. So let us see what will happen, what choices will Pandya make or somebody will make for him. But in the best of all worlds for India, at least for a couple of years, he will play across formats and be fit. Number 3, Gill and Ishan Kishan are looking like they are resolving India's opening batter problems, opening pair problems, at least in white ball cricket. So far the signs are good, so that is good news. 4th, Ishan's double century, all right, against Bangladesh, but in Bangladesh, it takes some doing to score a double 100, and that too in that short a time. So you have him, you have Pandya, you have Surya Kumar Yadav, you have many of these batters now who in the era of power cricket, on the era of power hitting, are now giving Indian cricket a new look. So maybe the coming year will bring us better results. Number 5 is Umran Malik's hesitant rise. Hesitant not because he is hesitant because India's team management and the board are hesitant, exposing him to too many good batsmen on good surfaces. So he played in New Zealand, he clicked very good pace, he's got a lot of talent, and I think in his wake a few more really fast people are coming in. So once again the recommendation would be the old one, which is invest in pace, because your return in investment there is likely to be the best of all, particularly if you want to continue winning overseas. And sixth point, it has nothing to do with men's cricket, but the sixth happy point that we are picking up is that BCCI this year decided that there will be pay parity between men and women players contracted by the board. So on that positive note, let us finish this year. Pay parity, by the way, is still a little bit limited because this is about match fees, not annual contracts, but maybe we'll get there in the course of time.